is I did play around with the recordings, and so just so you are aware, the recording is only going to have my screen. However, I can still see all of you. So like right now, I see all of you. All right. So please just be mindful of that, there is a recording. I see you all. It also records your audio. So if you were to say anything, that will get recorded. Okay. So just keep that in mind. So don't think that, or when I'm doing a share screen, I don't know if you think that I can't see you, but I can. So just keep that in mind. Okay. All right, so equations as relations. We were talking about relations yesterday, ordered pairs. We talked about taking an ordered pair and putting it into a table, and also plotting them on a graph, okay? So today what we're gonna do is we're going to look at equations. Before I even go any further, can anybody tell me what an equation is? What does an equation have in it?
Yeah.
You know, this could be stupid, but is it an equal sign?
That's exactly the answer. That's all it is.
I
There's a
can't hear you.
difference between, if you had something like this, a minus 3b, that's something called an expression. That does not have an equal sign on it. That is not an equation. Once I do this, now I've turned it into an equation. So that is exactly what an equation is. It's a math sentence that has an equal sign in it. So equations are simply math sentence with an equal sign. So they are different from expressions. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at an equation, and then I'm going to give you a relation, and I'm going to ask you if it's a solution or not. So for example, I know in this case I used A and B. Many times we're just so used to using X and Y, but it doesn't have to be X and Y. If ever you're given an example like this where it's not X and Y, and then I give you an ordered pair, so maybe I'll say something like, is 2, 4 a solution to A minus 3B equals 7? Well, we're so used to this representing X and Y, but don't forget that it represents really also the input and the output. Okay, so what I can do is not just think of them as X and Y. If you have other letters that aren't X and Y, you're just going to do it alphabetically. So in this case, the 2 would be the A and the 4 would be the B. I think on your homework, I was pretty good about just leaving it as X and Y instead of mixing it up and having different letters. But you may come across this, and so I just wanted you to know that in an ordered pair, we always go alphabetically. All right, so let's check it. If I plug in a 2 for A and I plug in a 4 for B, is this now a true statement? Is 2 minus 3 times 4 really 7? Is that true, yes or no?
No.
No, definitely not. So this is not true. So 2 comma 4 is not a solution. Let's try another one. What if I had asked for, let's do this. How about 10 comma 1? So if I'm using the same equation, A minus 3B equals 7, take a minute and tell me if 10 comma 1 is going to be a solution to that.
Yes.
Yes. I'm going to plug in the 10 for A, the 1 for B, and then I'm going to see, okay, is this actually true? Remember, you always have to follow order of operations, right? So I do have parentheses. There's nothing to do inside those parentheses, though. It's just a 1. But then I do have some multiplication to do. So the very next thing I should be doing is the 3 times 1. And 3 times 1 is just 3. And then, of course, 10 minus 3, yep, that really is 7. So this one does check out. So yes, 10(1) is a solution. I'm going to give you one to try without me kind of guiding you through it. Let's do it this way. All right, so try this one. I'm giving you an equation, and I want you to see which of these 4 is a solution, okay? More than one of them could work. So take a minute and find all of the ones out of this list, out of A, B, C, and D. Which ones actually work here? When you get it, if you want to shoot me your answer, just to me privately in the chat, I can let you know if you are correct or not. Okay, I'm getting a couple of answers in. I'm going to give you a clue that there is more than one answer here. So I want all of the ones that work. So many of you sent me one that works. So see if you can find all the ones that work. I'll give you maybe one more minute, see what you can get, and then we'll kind of go through the answers. Okay, so let's go through these one by one and see if we like the answer or don't. So for letter A, the option, I have 411. So let's go ahead and plug that in. So that would be -3. Remember that if I have a number written right next to a letter, that's multiplication. So that'd be -3 times 4, and then I'm going to plus 11. And I want to check, is that really equal to 1? Yes or no? Well, -3 times 4, that's going to get me a -12 plus 11. And then if you remember your rules for adding sign numbers, since there are different signs, I'm really taking the difference between the two. So I really want to subtract 12 and 11, which is 1, but because 12 is negative, the answer here would actually be -1. And -1 is not the same as +1, as we all know. So no, A does not work. So A is out. All right, see you later, A. All right, let's see if we can, I'm going to try and squeeze B in here. So if I did -3 times 1 plus 4, does that equal 1? I'm seeing a few of you shaking your head, and I got a lot of answers of B in the chat. So let's see if you are correct. -3 times 1 is in fact -3, plus 4 equals +1. Add those sign numbers together, and those of you that said that B was a correct answer, you are right. So that one works. I did tell you that there's more than one answer to this though. So this is not just a straight multiple choice where you think you're done. You got to keep going. You got to check them all. All right, let's try -2, -5. So if I do -3 times -2, and then I'm going to add that -5 in, does that really equal 1? All right, -3 times -2, that gets me that +6. I wonder if this is helpful if I turn that light on. Yeah, that looks a little bit better. And then adding a -5 is the same thing as just subtracting 5, right? And then it looks a lot easier. Yeah, 6 minus 5, that's definitely 1. So yes, C works as well. And let's check one more, D. Sorry, I'm not very good. My notes are always all over the place. So let's try -3 times -1. And then I'm going to add a -2 to it and see if that equals a +1 at the end. Let's see, -3 times -1 is now a +3. Adding a -2 is really just -2. And then yeah, 3 minus 2, that's definitely 1. So this one actually had 3 answers. B, C, and D all worked. That's kind of cool. So when you have an equation with more than one variable, remember variables are just the letters that we use, you can have an infinite number of solutions, right? That's so neat. I think on your homework today, you're going to see some that don't have 2 variables, it's just 1. So I think it might look something, let me just go on to the next page here. I think on your homework, it's going to be stuff that looks a little bit more like this. It might say, trying to remember how I had it set up. It might be something like, which is a solution for, and then it's going to give you some sort of an equation like 2x minus 3 equals 9, let's say. I don't know if the light's helping. See, now I think that's better. So it'll give you some choices. So maybe, I don't know, is 2 an answer? Is 7 an answer? Is 6 an answer? Or is 10 an answer? So I think your homework tonight is set up kind of a little bit more like this, at least one part of it. So you're just plugging in the values for X and seeing if it works or not. So you might only have 1 variable. If you have 2 though, you guys seem like you can handle that just fine too. So real quick, you might be able to just do this one in your head. Which one of these 4 choices ends up being my answer for this one? Yes, C, 6. If I do 2 times 6 minus 3, I do in fact get 9. Awesome. Okay, cool. So another thing that we're going to be looking at is I'm going to give you a domain with an equation and then ask you for the range. So let's try a couple problems like that. Give me a second to just write it out here. So if the domain is funny bracket, let's just do something kind of easy. How about -1, 0, and 2? Find the range for all right, let's try one like this. So here's where you really need to remember what domain even is. Because if you don't know what the domain is, you're not going to know what to do with these numbers. So the domain is another name for, just yell it out or unmute yourself and tell me.
What?
Someone said something, but I couldn't make out what they said.
What?
Yeah, the input or the X values, exactly. So when I give you this, if the domain is these 3 numbers, you're going to find the range. So what this is, guys, this is actually a sneaky teacher way for me to ask you 3 questions in one. Because what you need to do is you need to take each one of these values, plug it in for X, and see what comes out for Y. Okay, so you really have to do 3 mini problems, and then you'll have what the range is given this domain. Okay, so let's try that. So I need to take each one of these 3. Maybe let me just, I'll just jot that down in the notes so you remember. Take each and plug in for X. Right? Since this is a domain, we're going to plug them all in for X, and I will get my final answer at the end. So let's try it. I'll do -1 first. Make sure you're plugging it in for X. Okay, so I'll do the math out and see what comes out. 3 times -1 is a -3. And -3 plus 2 is just -1. So there's the first part of my answer. I'm not done because I have to also plug in 0 and 2. That's what I mean when I'm saying it's really 3 mini problems all in one. So there's the first one. Then I'll do the next one. Y equals 3 times 0 plus 2. That one's a little bit easier. You can probably do it in your head. That's just going to be 0 plus 2 or 2. Awesome. I have my second answer, and now I just have to do it for +2. So let me just sneak this in here. Y equals 3 times 2 plus 2. Do you guys see where I'm coming up with all of this? I'm just taking each one of these 3 and replacing the X with each one. And that's how I got 3 separate problems to kind of do out. So now I have 6 plus 2, and that's just 8. So when I go to write my final answer, right, because they're asking for the range, so I'm just going to throw them all in a list. So you don't have to write it out, but the range is, and then I just list my 3 answers. Remember we talked about having a list yesterday, and so order doesn't even really matter. -1 to 8, you could have put it as 8 to -1. Since it's just a listing, I just put it all in there and I have it. So there is my answer. Does that make sense?
What are these notes titled?
They were titled 6-2 Equations as Relations. There was my title. Equations as Relations. We have one more thing to go through and then we are done with the notes. We are now just going to try and do the opposite. So what happens when I give you a range and I ask you for the domain? Okay, so let's see if I should be able to fit this right in here. One more. So if the range is, let's do -3, 1, 2. Find the range, find the domain. So this again is like 3 mini problems because I'm giving you 3 range answers and now I'm asking you to find the domain. So I'm telling you right now, the most common mistake is that kids are going to do the exact same thing that they did for this one, where I gave you the domain. They're going to plug the values in for X and get an answer for Y. That is incorrect here, because these directions say this is the range. Remember, range is the Y value. So these this time all go in for Y. And you need to then figure out what the X value is. So these numbers, we're going to take each and plug in for Y. Because they said that they're part of the range and range is the Y values. Okay, but then other than that, the process is pretty much the exact same. So I'm going to take my first number, -3, and I'm going to put it in place of the Y, not the X, the Y. So this one will look like -3 equals X plus 4. Okay, and then if you remember from part 1 how to solve this, I'm just going to make that negative a little bit darker. Does anyone remember how to get the answer from this? What am I supposed to do with this 4?
Subtract.
Yes, thank you. I just subtract it from both sides. So -3 minus 4 is actually going to be a -7. So great, I have my first answer is going to be a -7. And then I just do the same thing with the other ones. So now I'll take +1 and I'll put it in place of the Y. So 1 equals X plus 4. And then I do the same thing. I'm still just going to subtract that 4 from both sides. So now I have my second answer is -3. So you guys go ahead and do the last one. Take a second and see what that's going to end up being. Hopefully you got -2. So then when I go to put it all together, I'm just going to write it. I'll just write it over here where I have some room. The domain, which is what I was looking for this time, right? The domain is funny brackets, and then I just get to list them. -7, -3, -2. And I'm done. There's my answer. And I'm so happy. Okay, guys. What do we think? Does anybody have any questions? No, none at this time. I'm doing a quick scan. I'm not seeing a lot of you on your screens, so come back to me if you got. All right, so I am now going to go ahead and assign your homework.